exiled over alleged links to an Israeli airstrike that killed top Houthi leaders in August. Acting Houthi Foreign Minister Abdul-Wahid Abu Ras has said that the investigation into the UN personnel was conducted under full judicial supervision and that the process is now moving towards trial. In August, an Israeli strike on the Houthi-controlled capital Sanaa killed the Prime Minister of the Iran-backed Houthi government along with several ministers, the first such attack to target senior officials. Abu Ras has claimed a cell within the World Food Programme was directly involved in the targeting, though the UN has strongly denied any connection between its staff or operations and the attack. The World Food Programme has not yet commented on the latest allegations. According to the UN, at least 59 of its personnel are currently detained by the Houthis, who have been accused of arbitrarily arresting aid workers and obstructing humanitarian operations in Yemen. The UN has demanded their immediate release. All the defendants are Yemeni nationals and, under Yemeni law, could face the death penalty if convicted. Let's take a listen in to what United Nations spokesperson Stefan Dujarric had to say on this.
Today, the de facto authorities arbitrarily detain one more of our UN colleagues. This follows the detention of 5 of our co-workers in recent days, including 2 female colleagues, bringing the total number of detainees by the Houthis to at least 59. And as you know, some of them have been held for years. We reiterate our strong condemnation of their continued arbitrary detention by the Houthis.
Dan Perry joins us once again to discuss this. Dan, what do the Houthis get out of arresting United Nations workers, and what does a Houthi trial look like?
Houthi trial is a farce. The Houthis are a terrorist group that hijacked about half of Yemen, rules it by fear, intimidation, and murder, has caused the deaths directly or indirectly of about 500,000 Yemenis over the decade plus of their ruination of the country. And there is no rule of law. On the other hand, when they claim that these workers for various Western NGOs might have helped Israel target them, I don't know, but I don't assume they're lying. I mean, if you are a worker for a do-goodnik Western agency that is trying to undo the chaos and destruction created by these maniacal, diabolical, satanic Houthis, I don't know, you might want to help Israel bomb their installations. I simply don't know, but it's conceivable that they're not lying. What for sure is true is that they're trying to make sure that if this happened, it won't happen again. And then in general, that the workers for Western agencies, which by and large are going to be Yemenis, are as fearful of the Houthis as are the other Yemenis. And don't get ideas that just because they work for the World Food Organization, that means they're somehow untouchable from the perspective of the Houthis. It is a great tragedy what's happening in Yemen. I can only hope that the will is found and the forces are amassed to somehow remove these criminals from power. And it's very sad that a bunch more Yemenis are going to be put on trial and quite potentially put to death.
And what can the United Nations do about this? 43 detained 43 detained United Nations staff is a huge number. Of course, all of them Yemeni nationals up for facing the death penalty if found guilty. Some criticise the United Nations for not being powerful enough in today's world. Can any action be taken on this?
The UN generally in its dealings with dictatorships is rather craven and cowardly, and they acquiesce and they almost in some ways legitimize and normalize evil governments in their efforts to offend no one and to be accepted everywhere. So that renders the United Nations a mockery, of course. The United Nations also in the General Assembly daily carries out a circus where the governments of dictatorships that oppress their own people to degrees that are just horrendous and by now well known because of the modern communication landscape, have an equal voice to the governments of democracies that oftentimes absurdly are accused by the dictators of various human rights abuses and so forth. The UN is a farce, but the UN has one body that is somewhat different, and that is the Security Council. And the Security Council could, if they wanted to, authorize the use of force against the Houthis. And whereas I'm generally speaking very far from a warmonger, indeed I argued against the Gaza war throughout much of its term, there are times when you must stand up. The problem is that the war carried out against the Houthis by the internationally recognized government of Yemen, which is now sort of in control only of the furthest eastern regions of the country, along with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, was not successful. But of course, they didn't have much international backing. So the UN, if it wanted to, can try to convene a coalition of the willing, led by Saudi Arabia, and resume the war against the Houthis. It will be ugly, because the Houthis are like Hamas, like in some cases Hezbollah, like Islamic State, a jihadist group that embeds in the population and dares you to end up killing civilians to get at them. And then, of course, they will be crying genocide and claiming that the West is trying to kill the civilians the way they have done against Israel and Gaza. So, not a lot of great options, but that's what the UN could do if they wanted.
Dan Perry, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to get your great insight on these issues. We now head to Europe for our next story, and Russia's defense ministry has announced the capture of the village of Nov-Uleskandrivka in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region. This announcement marks another escalation in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war as Moscow's forces continue to press across multiple fronts in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia has also launched an overnight attack on the northeastern city of Sumy in Ukraine. National emergency services have said the strikes damaged a multi-story residential building, private homes and critical infrastructure, which injured 11 people, including 4 children. Additionally, local authorities have reported damage to a railway depot where several carriages were also destroyed. In another related development, local officials have reported that a Ukrainian drone strike has hit a pipeline at a local power plant in Russia's western city of Oryol. Now, this attack has forced the power plant authorities to restrict heat and hot water supplies to its residents. We now move on to further developments